All right, and here I am with my man Gabe. What up, Gabe?
What up, Jim? Thank you for having me again.
Yeah,
Sure.
you're the lead, the batter. You're batting lead off. I figured you'd be a speedy guy.
How do I keep getting pulled into these situations?
You're just going to keep getting pulled in. You're not going to get out. But here we are, and it's a weird week. This is a really odd week, especially
really odd week.
At JSA. I like the idea of Jeff Lemire doing the JSA. I don't think the book has come fully into the deal yet, but it's big enough for me to not be that weirded out that it's the first book we're talking about this week. But it kind of is, because there's not a lot of big books this week. There's
no
a lot
Batman,
of these side
no
books.
Superman, no Justice League, no nothing.
Yeah, nothing. So here we are. You get to lead off again.
Fantastic.
And here we are with JSA. I'll get right into this. JSA number 5. It's a weird book, but it is written by Jeff Lemire. It's art by Diego Ortegui. Colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands. People were talking in our Slack that you go with the Patreon and talking about the art in this and saying some people like it, some people don't. I think it's okay. It didn't ruin it for me, but it didn't elevate it either.
It didn't.
So.
And I knew I don't know him, but I'm just saying I'm familiar with his art style when he did the Golden Age Jay Garrick miniseries about a year or so ago. And that worked out. It kind of, I wasn't sure at first, but it kind of grew on me, and I kind of liked it. It has a lot of the feel of the artist who currently does Transformers, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head for some reason. Jorge Corona. It has a kind of a Jorge Corona feel to it. When he came over to JSA, he changed the style a little bit, and it wasn't quite as good. And I'm like, what happened here? So, well, yeah.
When you get to the what's it called, cliffhanger page, where you actually have Jay Garrick, that looks like the style of the Jay Garrick book. And some of the parts where I think that maybe it's a little rushed, maybe he didn't have a lot of time, but some of the things aren't as detailed or has that look that he had in it. So it does kind of get a little wonky. But it didn't ruin it for me. And this book, overall, I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I would probably, if somebody really put me, and if they said, do you like it? And I said, well, yeah, because I think my gut reaction would be to say, yeah, because I like Jeff Lemire. I liked the idea of the JSA, but if I had to explain why I liked it, I would probably have a little bit of a difficult time, because all in all, I think it's still at that mid-range deal. It hasn't really gone up to a point where I can say to somebody, hey, you got to read this. I think this first way of him doing this first arc, a little bit wonky. Things are a little stretched out. You have a huge team, and even a team of villains as well, but I think it has to settle itself down a little and tell more of an engaging story. This idea of the JSA versus the Injustice Society is okay, and it's classic, but it's not really doing it for me. How about you?
Completely agree. I'm a little confused about what Lemire is doing here, because it seems like, the written review will be out shortly, so it'll echo a lot of the same statements. Is he seems to be experimenting or playing around with the structure of the plot. Because, like, in the first 2 issues, it's like he jumped ahead, and then the second issue was the flashback. It was like, why did you reverse it? Here, I like the pieces of all the subplots. I like what's going on with Dr. Midnight. I like what's going on with the Demon Dimension. I like what's going on with the Hawks and this maybe Kid Eternity. I like the pieces. The pieces aren't coming together.
Yeah, it's weird. There's no real glue. It's
very unfocused. It's very scattered. So I think he needs to pare away some of the sub-stuff, some of the subplots, focus on like one thing with a couple of things on the side, and move forward. He's too much all over the place, and it's kind of like very jarring.
And when it is jarring, it ends up making each of these scenes seem a little less, because you're kind of like thrown into it. And all in all, maybe what he's doing, because again, he is doing these little subplots, and maybe he doesn't want one to be, as better than the red. Like, he wants them to be, and they kind of seem watered down. But it just ends up, that's what you need, something, because by the end, again, if I'm going to be talking to, I'm talking to you, but if somebody said, oh, what cool thing happened in this issue? It's like, well, you had this cool, but it's okay. And then you have this that could be cool. And then that's it's okay. And all in all, it just ends up, like you said, feeling very scattered. But I'm with you, though. I like the individual things. I like seeing this new Kid Eternity in hell, saving
maybe
Carter.
A Kid Eternity.
Maybe. She doesn't understand what's going on, but that's a neat little mystery of itself. where she then goes and gets Carter Hawkman out. He needs to find his wings. And even then she says, and
Are you an angel?
Are you an angel? I'm like, oh my God. And says, hey, let's go find these things. And then Kendra comes in. I like that Kendra comes in and she's like, I'm here to save the day. They're already kind of going. But they then get attacked by, the big play of the demons. And again, it's just, you kind of stop things when they're just getting good a lot of times in this book. It kind of plays out in that way a lot, right?
I mean, if you sit down and work it out on paper, this arc has maybe 4 or 5 separate mysteries happening at the same time.
Yeah.
You have who's Kid Eternity? What's going on with Obsidian and Jakeem? What's going on with Johnny Sorrow? What is the ISA after? As far as like they need these ancient relics like the Spear of Destiny and the Helmet of Fate. And it's like it's too much. It's too much. It's too much on my mental plate. You gotta focus it up a little bit.
And even if the play is, I came up. I thought if this was clever, nobody seemed to go with it. I always get upset. But I said at one point, Eric didn't even bat an eye. But if you have a book where there's more mysteries than there's issue numbers, there's a problem. There's too much going on. I thought I was blowing minds there. But in the meantime, you could go, and it's funny because this whole arc is called Ragnarok. So you could go basically, well, the Injustice Society wants to bring on the end of it, but you need more than just because every villain wants to, bring down the end of everything, whatever. And you're right. When you go through it, you are there for these little moments of this, but it doesn't come together as a cohesive whole yet.
Because your attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. You can't focus.
And I mean, even the idea of Hawkman, the idea he's in hell, they have taken his wings, they have the nth metal, all that, but all in all, you're just there to see him getting saved, but you never sit there and think, well, now that he's saved, that's cool, because then that can't happen, it just, he's there. Kid Eternity, maybe, and Kendra, and you're like, okay, then you move on, and everything just feels like, and then you move on, and you can't really connect the things. And again, there's some cool characters. I like Gentleman Ghost and Solomon Grundy. I do like that Solomon Grundy legitimately says something more than Born on a Monday. I mean, that's all they ever do. And he says, Grundy smell hell. And I like that Gentleman Ghost like, yeah, let me do the talking there, pal. I thought it was funny. But then you have
I'm just glad Grundy recovered after Donna Troy ripped his heart out in the Wonder Woman series.
That is true.
I'm glad he's all better from that because it looked like that hurt a little bit.
And that might have hurt a bit and also made him forget that he was kind of a good guy in the Poison Ivy series. This is the synergy that me and you were talking about in the spotlight, because of this nonsense. But there he is, and he's the heavy hitter. But I do like Gentleman Ghost. And you end up where they go on their, hey, what's going on? We're looking for, Dr. Midnight and all these things going on. And they're like, hey, you go that way, turn left at Albuquerque and whatever. But the idea of there's this young spirit, and actually, the idea of the Hawkman and Kid Eternity and things, that's what they're actually going. It says there's a young spirit with them. And that's where you get, Jim Craddock says, hey, I'm pretty good at tracking down Ghost. He gets on his horse like I like that Gentleman Ghost now thinks he's something special. But he's like, all right, get the horse out. I am now the sheriff in town, and they're going to go off and try to find them. It's fine. But again, you end then. You really are just setting up a scene to then go to the next setting up a scene. And,
and if you think through all the subplots that happen in this issue, none of them are resolved. They're just furthered, like to get to the next step in that little mini journey, but then they're just like, okay, so now I've got to pay attention to these 5 or 6 things, and I'm still not sure where to focus.
And I'll tell, Jeff Lemire is one of my favorite writers, so
he's a good writer.
I do think that these things will be all tied up, everything will make sense, whatnot. Maybe not like you want them to, but I do think that this will happen. The idea, and you just kind of piqued my interest a bit there. Gabe. By the way, my compass goes south. I just wanted to mention that this week again. But in the meantime,
that's a leftover. Don't pay attention to that guy.
In the meantime, though, I think that one of the plays of a really good writer, which I think Jeff Lemire is where you have all these loose threads. You got to at least tie one up. You can't keep adding. You got to do that play with maybe you have 5 loose ends. You tie up 2, introduce a new one. You have to lessen some things. You have to make it feel, to me as a reader, that it was worth reading this issue because something was resolved, something that I was wondering, something, even if it's resolved to set up a next mystery, you do need something to make it feel like it was worthwhile. That you ended up in this book just feels like it's always out of my reach, especially because some of these characters I don't know. I am not a lifelong fan of the JSA, or I've read comics most of my life, like some people. So I end up coming into this, and I'm getting there gradually. But again, loose ends are starting to get frustrating. And so you even have the idea, like you said, of Obsidian and Jakeem, where you're in Obsidian's dream, but he's also being grabbed by Dr. Midnight, who's dragging Obsidian away, ends up with a Savage, what's her name? She gets knocked out. Scandal Savage. I was going to call her Scarlet Savage. Scandal Savage gets knocked out, so she's upset. All these things going. And you kind of have your head spinning. It really is tough overall. But you go back to the JSA, and now you have, I'm telling you, Obsidian, who's actually Johnny Sorrow. He's trying to go and realizes, oh my God, yeah, there's Dr. Midnight. He's got to stop this. This is obviously him going and trying to stop things in its tracks before things are revealed, because she knows that Dr. Midnight knows the jig is up here and might reveal some stuff. But
no, it's a little odd to me. I mean, I'm not a Scandal Savage aficionado, but I seem to hear more complaints more than any other character about the way Scandal is portrayed in this comic. So just for some reason, people are like expecting her to be some kind of bloodthirsty mercenary who only does things for cash. I was like, well, okay, so why is she hanging out with a team? He's like, well, she's a villain. I don't know.
And maybe the idea,
she's probably getting paid. I don't think she's going to do this for free. So.
No, I think she's getting paid. And I think that you even kind of see that she doesn't get along with the rest of the team. And the team isn't getting along anyway. But in the meantime, they're trying to get the same play off of the JSA. And they're trying to get a family pretty much to go against each other. And it's working. I mean, it is working so far. But, Obsidian / Johnny Sorrow, they're going to go off and go with it, but you end up having our man who says, I don't think this is right. This doesn't seem right. Like, what you're doing seems really like half-cocked and going. So he stays behind, only to stay behind so that there's somebody to tell Jade what is going on and what Obsidian's doing. But they seem to think that Jesse's the one who's acting all weird. It's very odd throughout all this. Like, the idea that Jade cannot get the idea. She just thinks that her brother is, a hothead and whatnot, which is a past continuity type deal that Eric had talked about. But again, it feels weird because then you go to her and Sandy here, they're with Jakeem's body, just to remind you that Of the Mind is just taking place in the mind, but Jakeem's still there in his coma, but Dr. Midnight's gone. So, hey, how did Scandal get in? Who did this? Whatever. And it all leads back to, I need to talk to my brother, but he's gone. I'm telling you, this issue is like, it is all over the place pretty much, but yet it's not, because nothing gets resolved. But
I mean, I would say to Lemire's credit, I mean, it is all over the place just structurally as far as which plot thread is doing what, but you can still follow it. I'm not confused about what's happening.
And I think you're the same way. Some names, but it's because there's so many names and some of the characters that I don't talk about a lot. But you're right. It's not like confusing. I'm saying at the end that I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. It does. It makes sense what they're doing. It's just plodding forward so slowly, and nothing's getting resolved in the way that you kind of need to have something going on this far in. We're at issue 5. Some of these things should tie up. And again, I don't think
we're at issue 5 and we still don't know what the ISA is doing.
No. And overall, I think that this is a book that should be talked about more, but it's not. I don't hear anybody talking about it. So even if
I was looking forward to this title. When it was announced that Lemire was going to be on JSA, I'm like, oh, I want to check that one out. And I mean, I won't say I'm disappointed. I would just say I kind of wish it was better.
That's the problem. I think that I had high expectations and they haven't gotten to them yet. I'm waiting for it to get real. I'm waiting for that issue that I'm wowed, that I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for. This is awesome. This is cool. And that's an awesome moment. And I hope it comes. I trust them enough to think it may, but it's just not there yet. Because then you go back to the ISA. They're there at the tip. None of these guys get along, whatnot. And the whole play of Scandal even coming back. It's like, hey, we gotta do what we're going to do. The idea that Dr. Midnight has escaped with, Obsidian's body. We got to go do this. She's pissed off. Everybody's arguing. You end up having, this fog The mad gasser. He's like, I want to get that sand. Like, everybody has their own little thing, which you're supposed to see the cracks in this whatnot, but just, I don't know. It's just not that interesting yet. It's not interesting in the idea because I can't grasp exactly what they are doing, what the plan is, and what this means. So all in all, it basically is just little vignettes of characters that I enjoy. And by the end, I'm like, all right. And then they're like, we're going to take down the Tower of Fate, which is what they wanted to do from the very beginning. And you go and see this. And the art, again, this should be something that wows you. This spread page, it's okay. It's not bad, but it's just not the oomph that I expected. Yeah. You have a really good cliffhanger page. When you do see Jay Garrick, Alan Scott, Dr. Fate there.
It's almost a little too sketchy.
Yeah.
It's a little too sketchy. And somebody else reminded me, another question that somebody brought up that I hadn't even thought about. The fog is on the ISA. Is this the same fog that was fighting with Alan Scott, or not Alan Scott, the original Sandman in the miniseries from last year?
That's the one.
Wouldn't he be like 80?
I'm saying that they have to explain why he hasn't aged as much, and it must be the sand powers of the fog.
Yeah, because that was the 1940s. That was 80 years ago, and he would have been 20 or 30, so...
Yeah. You have him.
He'd be over 100 by now.
Yeah, you have Dr. Elemental from the Jay Garrick book, and you have, what's her name? Sokov, the Red Lantern.
Oh, the Red Lantern, but that's what's her face's daughter. Yeah,
she's a daughter. So, but those are the ones that carried over, and I didn't think that Lemire did a really great job of maybe introducing those to readers who didn't read those minis.
Now, Wotan is Wotan. So
Wotan's Wotan. And again, he's kind of leading the show. At one point, I thought maybe Johnny Sorrow would, but Johnny Sorrow's just impersonating Obsidian at this point. And again, in this, though, you end up having all these threads still. The idea, and even adding the idea that Obsidian / Johnny Sorrow is going off to take care of Dr. Midnight. You have just Hawkman. You have the Tower of Fate. You have all these things going. You need some resolution. It might be too many things to resolve at the end of an arc. That seems to be next issue, but we'll see. And even then, that's a smart thing when you have these things to leave one or two ongoing things to keep going. But there's a lot. We add the Kid Eternity thing. This issue, there's a lot of things going on in this, and it's crazy. But I don't hate it. I just want to, like you said it, I want to like it more. I really want to like it more because it has that, it scratches that itch that I know that I could. It's just not there yet, but what would you give it?
Let's see. I haven't published a review yet. It is coming out, but I'll be consistent about it. I gave it a 6.5. Because again, I like the individual pieces. I want them to come together better. If he can straighten that out now, issue 6 is supposed to be the end of the first arc. I mean, I think in just general terms, there is absolutely no way Lemire can take all these pieces and wrap them all up in a single issue and make it feel satisfying and not rushed and all that other stuff. So if he can do it, my hat's off. He's a miracle worker. Good for him. Yeah. But there's no way. I mean, I would be shocked.
You would assume that the little things of that, but again, I don't think even Obsidian being Johnny Sorrow, I don't think that could. But I think that Hawkman's save, you'll get Kid Eternity like trying to figure out on the team and maybe getting the team of the JSA back in one bit and then resolve the rest. But even then, there's a lot going on. The Tower of Fate. All that, we'll see. But I'm going to say I think 6.5 is a perfect score. I think that it is in that play where it is good. It's not great yet. There's a lot of things that need to get better, but it's got that. And I'll tell you, my moral compass, it does go south. But my compass on this book is actually, if you pushed me and said, are you more going up or down on this? I would say that I'm going up. I think that it's going to get better. I'm looking for it to get better so I can see it being something not like, oh man, this stinks and it's going to get worse. So
if you can wrap up at least most of the threads in the next issue and then start a new arc, maybe with a little, leftovers, but minor leftovers, and then come at it with a clean, focused story, I think we're going to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I do too. I think we might get there. We'll see. We'll be talking about it, so we'll see when it comes up. But thanks for joining me, Gabe. Before we go, let everybody know where you can be found all over the intranets.
Well, obviously, right, Weird Science. So if you go to the Weird Science sites, that's where you're going to find all the written stuff that I do. But for everything else, so if you're interested in non-Big Two comics, Dynamite, Zenoscope, Mad Cave, Titan, all the Conan stuff, right? That's all the big hitters right now. Go over to Comical Opinions all one word, on all the socials and also comicalopinions.com. Come on over. We'd love to have you, and we'll be happy to talk comics anytime.
Weird science is the revolution.